volume getting added into the system is when we have the carbohydrate oxidations. So carbohydrate synthesis and the oxidation process in there also creates water, which is about 200 milliliter per day. Very interesting intake source of the water. Cells producing water or the metabolism producing water. So primarily intake through ingestion of water, drinking of water, and then we also have carbohydrate. So do not forget two basic sources. Now how do we lose water? So that's very important. How do we lose water? So I think the very common answer is going to be, hey, the water which we excrete in the urine, that is the water which we lose. Well, there are more mechanisms to lose water than that, so let's quickly see that. So we say that the water loss is primarily of two types, insensible and sensible. Insensible means we cannot sense it. Water is getting lost, water is moving out of our body, but we cannot feel it, we are not aware of it, we cannot sense it. It is insensible water loss. So what is that loss? Again, that is not going through the renal system. What that is evaporation of the water through skin and evaporation of the water through the pulmonary system, lungs. So these two systems, skin and pulmonary system or lungs, the water evaporation from there, that water evaporation is called insensible water loss. How much water loss do we have in this route? We have about 350 milliliter. So again, these are averages, could be increased or reduced. About 350 milliliter per day from the skin and about 350 milliliter per day from the lungs. So what does that mean? The skin has a cornified layer on top of it, so it is actually sort of sealed. But even then, for a normal healthy individual, about 350 milliliter of water is lost via the skin through evaporation. So now you might say, okay, I already know this is the sweating. No, this is not sweating. Sweating is sensible water loss. We are aware of sweating. This is insensible water loss. This is evaporation through the skin. You cannot control it. The people who have disease of the sweating or sweat glands, or who are genetically born with a problem that their sweat glands are not present or abnormal, even then they lose 350 milliliter or some water through their evaporation. So it is independent of the sweat glands. Second is the pulmonary system. So when the air goes into our lungs, the air moisture level outside the body is different from the moisture inside the lungs. So what happens is, as the air goes inside the lungs, the water vapors present in the lung, they get mixed with the air, and when we exhale it, that water vapor, they are removed as well. So that is why if you stand in front of a mirror and you exhale on that, you would see the water vapor actually precipitating on the mirror or going on the mirror. So about 350 milliliter per day of the water can be lost through the lungs as well. This would increase in dry and cold environments. Why? In the cold environment, the water has actually reduced. The water vapor pressure in the environment is almost down to zero. So you would lose more water through the respiration, and that is why that dry feeling in the air passages during the winter times. So anyways, insensible water loss and then the sensible water loss. So in the sensible water loss, of course, the primary one is going to be the renal. About 1400 milliliter per day. About 1400 milliliter per day. But again, as I said, that the water intake is variable. Similar to that is the water output or loss. So more input, more intake, more loss, less intake, less loss. But remember this thing, that kidneys would need at least half a liter of water to remove the waste products produced in our body in one day. So we have to have urine output of at least half a liter per day. But again, it would depend if a normal, healthy, physiologically good, healthy person, in that person, water loss is going to be dependent upon the water intake. So up to 1400 milliliter per day. So that is the kidney. Then water loss through the fecal route, about 100 milliliter per day is through that route. Then of course the skin. So you would say, aha, we brought the skin back in. Yes, this was the skin which was water loss via evaporation. This is skin water loss through sweating, and this is again about 100 milliliter per day. About 100 milliliter per day. So how do we lose water? There are multiple routes. Renal being the most important route, sensible route, we are aware of it, about 1400 milliliter. Fecal route, sensible route, we are aware of it, about 100 milliliter per day. Skin, sweating, about 100 milliliter per day. And then insensible, that route which we are really not aware of, and that is the evaporation through the skin and the pulmonary system. So these are the routes. So I can do this. So I can say that the water is produced by, or water is gained by drinking water and by oxidation or carbohydrate metabolism, right? So that gives about 200 milliliter, and this one gives about 2100. And then water loss is via kidneys, then it is via the GIT, the fecal matter, then we have via skin, that is really the sweating. And so these are, in my opinion, these are the sweat drops which are coming out of the skin. So these are the routes for the water elimination. Now let's talk about how do we, what is the composition of water in these areas. So for the composition of the water and the distribution of the fluid in these areas, let's try to understand first of all the water volumes. Yeah. So the water volumes are, so we have, so this was really the sensible portions, then we had the insensible here, sorry I missed that, so the lungs or the pulmonary system as we talked about before, and again skin, but this is evaporation instead of the sweating, and this is also evaporation really. So insensible loss and the sensible loss, and that is the water loss. So now we're going to talk about the distribution of water in these compartments. So again, as a student, you should know that if water distribution is varied, the volume of these compartments are different, why are they different? So let's talk about how much water. So the first thing to know is that the total body water, and this is going to be a very important thing for you to encounter and work with when you would have the patients who you are working on. So total body water in a normal healthy person is about 60% of the body weight. Now this ratio of 60% actually can increase or reduce. What and how would that be? Normally this can be changed because of the ratio of the fat cells in a person. So let's say this is a fat cell. I hope that you have done histology and you know that the fat cells have a big fat globule present inside the cell, and everything else is really pushed on a side. So really fat cells have a very small quantity of cytoplasmic fluids, but their major part in them is really the fat. So I'm going to try to make it a little bit yellowish. So this is the fat present in the cell. So fat cells only have a ratio of about 10% fluid. 10% fluid. So this ratio is then going to play in total body water ratio depending upon